Hi there and welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm Jennifer Ebling, and today is March 4th, and there are just 16 days until the first day of spring. We're at the Sweet 16. Today we celebrate a man who wrote the book on growing and selling orchids. We'll also learn about a very special Arbor Day that was designed to honor Luther Burbank, the great plant breeder. And we'll hear a touching excerpt today about the final days of an incredible gardener, teacher, and friend. And we grow that garden library today with a book about the beautiful flowers of Japan. And finally, we'll wrap things up with a sweet little advertisement about the gladiolus and dahlias, two beautiful flowers that most gardeners are ordering and shopping for this month if they haven't already. But first, I just wanted to put a little plug in for Podchaser. If you get a chance and can head on over to leave a review for the show, I would greatly appreciate it. Recently, Barbara shared a review for the Daily Gardener. She wrote, "Thoughtful and unique gardening podcast. Lots of historical and practical information." And then Ann Sickinger left a very nice review of the show. She wrote, "I really enjoy the history of plants and gardening that Jennifer has obviously researched so thoroughly. I can't imagine how she comes up with all the interesting tidbits about the lives of plant lovers long past, but I enjoy hearing about them." Well, Anne, I have to tell you that I, for one, sometimes can't believe the lengths that I will go to find out botanical information. And sometimes I just have to say, enough. You have enough. And if you can't find anything today, we're going to cross our fingers that more material will become digitized and available to the public. And then all of us will be able to discover these stories for ourselves. But in the meantime, I'll continue to spend my days reading and writing about botanical history and literature, my two passions. In any case, I just want to say a quick thank you to Barbara and Anne for taking the time to review the show because it really means a lot to me. It's one of the ways that people find out about the podcast is if the podcast has good reviews. And so now with Anne's review, the show is up to 19 reviews, and I have a goal of getting 50 reviews for the podcast by the end of this year. So if you're listening and you can find some time in your week to head on over to podchaser.com, I would so appreciate a review from you. All right, it's time for curated garden news. Today's garden news was written by Michelle Miley over at Hunker, and the title of the post is 5 Perennial Herbs That You Should Grow. Now, of course, these herb recommendations can vary a little bit based on your location, because I know one of these 5 is rosemary. And if you live in the Midwest, you're probably not going to get rosemary to come back reliably as a perennial year after year. But I think her other recommendations are very, very good, including chives, one of my favorite perennial herbs. You know, chives are wonderful. And what I tell most gardeners is, generally speaking, you only need to start out with a couple of bunches of chives because in no time they will seed and you will have little chive plants popping up all over your garden. But they are wonderful, and they're so easy to eliminate if you decide you don't want it growing in a certain spot. So don't worry about that. And you know, another nice thing about chives that people sometimes forget is that the blossom really does make a good cut flower. You can put a beautiful little white chive pom-pom blossom. It's in the allium family. And so you get that wonderful little globe, that beautiful little white head on top of that chive stem. And they are really, really attractive in a bouquet. And then also, chives are wonderful friend makers. So if you have a neighbor that loves to cook, encourage them to come on over and snip some chives anytime they want to. I've always done that. It's a wonderful way to meet your neighbors, to offer cuttings from your garden. And I always like to put a few chives out by the mailbox or near the street. Because that way, if I do have a neighbor that wants to pop over and harvest, they don't have to go trooping through the entire garden. It's just right there on the edge of the property, and they can take care of it themselves. Just a fun neighborly thing to do. All right, well, if you would like to read about the 3 other perennial herbs that Michelle is recommending, let me see here. She's recommending sweet fennel, rosemary, already mentioned that one, oregano, and mint. Oh, and I know I want to talk about this quick for a second here before we close this out. With regard to mint, I think sometimes mint gets a bad rap because it can be so thuggish in the garden. But not all mints are created equal. You can think about the chocolate mints or the peppermints or the spearmints. And some of them are just not going to be as aggressive, but you'll have to experiment a little bit with this. So don't treat them all like they're going to go gallivanting through your garden. Some will, but some will not. And as for my garden, when it comes to apple mint, my favorite mint, I do let that one go wherever it wants in my garden within reason. Again, for me, mint is very easy to eliminate. I just pull it. It's not a big deal, especially the apple mint. And it gets very tall. In my garden back in Maple Grove, it's not uncommon to see it almost reaching 3 feet tall. And I love, love, love the big, soft leaves of apple mint. So if you've never tried growing that one, give that one a try. That's a fantastic mint. All right, now we can be done with curated garden news for today. If you would like to check out this post by Michelle, it's so easy to do. Just head on over to the Facebook group for the show. When you get there, search for the word herb, and Michelle's post will pop right up. And if you're not in the group, no big deal. Just search for Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend, and then request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. It's time for today's botanical history. All right, here's botanical history for March 4th. Today is the birthday of the German-English orchidologist and nurseryman Henry Frederick Conrad Sander, who was born on this day, March 4th, in 1847. As a young man of 20 years old, Conrad met the Czech plant collector Benedict Rezel. Benedict's heart lied in exploration and acquisition. He did not enjoy the marketing and sales aspects of plant hunting. Instead, those skills were Conrad's strengths, and the two men struck up a business plan that left Benedict free to explore and collect, and Conrad to grow, 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 and sell, sell, sell. Conrad set up shop in St. Albans, and Benedict was soon sending shipments of orchids from Central and South America. Benedict and Conrad's relationship is legendary in the plant world. Benedict collected for Conrad Sander for 40 years. And even though Benedict was 6 feet 2 inches tall and had an imposing iron hook for a hand, during his collecting days, Benedict was robbed 17 times, and once he was even attacked by a jaguar. Well, once Conrad and Benedict got their operation underway, Conrad began expanding. Soon he was managing inventory from over 20 collectors, and he was growing orchids in over 60 greenhouses and entertaining visitors that included Europe's top collectors and even royalty. As a result of his business success acquiring, breeding, and selling orchids, Conrad became known as the King of Orchids. Leveraging his incredible expertise, Conrad wrote a masterpiece in 2 volumes on every variety of orchid. The book was folio-sized, it was large, and it had text in 3 languages: English, French, and German. It was ahead of its time. And best of all, the botanical drawing of the orchids was life-sized. As a sign of respect, Conrad named his book Reichenbachia in honor of the legendary orchidologist Heinrich Gustav Reichenbach. And this honor was well-deserved because Reichenbach had named more orchids than any other person on the planet. And in his will, Heinrich Gustav Reichenbach asked that his herbarium be closed for 25 years to protect his work with orchids from his competitors. Well, in turn, in 1882, Heinrich honored Conrad Sanders by naming the Queen of the Philippine Orchids after Conrad. He named it the Vanda Sanderiana, but the locals just called it the Walling orchid. The Walling is considered one of the rarest, most beautiful, and most expensive orchid, and it's also one of the largest species of orchids in the world. Orchids are some of the world's oldest flowering plants, and they produce the world's tiniest seeds. And to give you an idea of this, consider that a single orchid seed pod can contain 3 million seeds. Orchids are also the largest family of flowering plants in the world. With over 25,000 species, orchids represent about 10% of all plant species on Earth, and there are more orchids on Earth than mammals and birds. Now, once they are germinated, orchids can take 5 to 7 years to produce a flower. And if you look at the orchid bloom closely, you'll see that the blossom, like the human face, is perfectly symmetrical, which I think only adds to their visual beauty. And keep this fact in mind. By the time you are buying that orchid at Trader Joe's, it is likely already decades old. But never fear, orchids are long-lived and can reach their 100th birthday. The vastness and complexity of orchids can be frustrating. Charles Darwin once grew so discouraged writing his book about orchids that he wrote to a friend, "I am very poorly today and very stupid and hate everybody and everything." Orchids, they'll drive you crazy. And it was on this day, March 4th, in 1949, that the Santa Cruz Sentinel out of Santa Cruz, California, published a lovely story about the upcoming Arbor Day celebration. Now, this story first caught my attention because it features a wonderful photo of a tree being pruned, and it had this caption: "Santa Rosa citizens to plant trees in commemoration of birth of famed Luther Burbank, nurseryman Joe Badger, who in his youth used to steal fruit from Luther Burbank's trees, prunes a flowering plum tree as Burbank's widow looks on Arbor Day, which this year, 1949, will commemorate the 100th anniversary of the birth of the great horticulturist. This tree will be planted in Mrs. Burbank's garden at Santa Rosa, California, near the spot where her husband is buried." And then here's the rest of the article. Burbank's widow said, "No, there will be no wreath laying on Luther Burbank's grave. Laying a wreath is only a ceremony. It doesn't make things grow. Instead, she and nurseryman Joe Badger, who as a youngster stole plums from the Burbank experimental gardens, will plant a flowering plum tree adjoining the Redwood Highway, where passerbys can enjoy it. The flowering plum that was getting planted was developed by her husband. He gained worldwide fame with his Burbank potato, his spineless cactus, and many other horticultural achievements. Her husband now lies buried under a huge cedar of Lebanon tree in a simple, unmarked grave. And beside him lies his white mongrel dog, Bonita, who was his constant companion until Burbank died in 1926. Burbank had specifically requested that no marking be placed above his burial place. Instead, he was buried beneath his cedar of Lebanon. And Burbank himself had planted that tree. He'd put the seed in the ground after it was sent by a friend in Palestine. Burbank said, "When I go, don't raise a monument to me. Instead, plant a tree." It's time for Unearthed Words. In Unearthed Words, today's words are by Wendy Johnson, the garden writer, from her book, Gardening at the Dragon's Gate. This excerpt is from her first chapter, Valley of the Ancestors. We were not to live and practice with Alan Chadwick again until 8 years later, when he returned to Green Gulch at the end of his life. Despite the unrelenting grip of his illness, Alan continued to rage against the dying of the light. He announced with dignity, "I intend to be in the garden tomorrow." "We will welcome you," I murmured. Alan never made it to the garden. Instead, we brought the garden to him. I cut armloads of fresh flowers for him every few days. Winter jonquils and Korean lilac, wind-blown anemones, and stiff coral quince that Alan recognized from his original gardens at Green Gulch, and a single blood-red poppy grown from seed gathered from the World War II battlefields of Flanders. During these months, the garden itself upwelled with a rare treasure trove of bloom, and Alan drank long draughts from the bottomless pool of flowers. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Flora Japonica by Masumi Yamanaka. This book came out in 2017, and Masumi is an award-winning botanical artist based at the Royal Botanic Gardens, Kew. In this book, Masumi begins by revealing the history of Japanese botanical illustration with a lovely overview of the work of the influential botanist and illustrator Tomataro Makino. Next, Masumi shares beautiful artwork that showcases the indigenous plants of Japan. Flora Japonica showcases 80 specially commissioned paintings from 36 of Japan's best modern botanical artists. Daily gardeners will love that each painting also shares detailed information about the plant's habitat and history, as well as a botanical description. This book is 240 pages of the botanical art that highlights Japan's glorious and incomparable flora. You can get a copy of Flora Japonica by Masumi Yamanaka and support the show by using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $4. This book is such a deal, so I hope you get one of those copies at that price. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day, March 4th, in 1956, that the Chicago Tribune ran 2 advertisements for gladiolas and dahlias by R.H. Shumway. The gladiolas were being sold as a rainbow mixture. 50 bulbs cost $1. 100 bulbs cost $1.75, and 200 bulbs cost $3.25. Now, the dahlias were the new giant variety, and 2 bulbs cost 25 cents, and that also covered the cost of postage. Now, today, right about now, is the perfect time to order your gladiolas and your dahlias. Gladiolas are the official flower of August. The etymology of the word gladiolas is Latin and means little sword in reference to the shape of the flowers. And here's an interesting fact about gladiolas. The corms have been used medicinally to help extract slivers or thorns. And I'll never forget what my friend Joel Karsten, the author of Straw Bale Gardening, told me about just how easy it is to plant gladiolas in conditioned straw bales. Once the flowers are done blooming in the fall, you just kick the bale over and the corms fall out for easy gathering. Now, as for the beautiful dahlia, it was originally grown as a food crop. And it turns out that dahlia tubers are edible, and they taste a little like other root vegetables. Think of the potato or the carrot to get an idea. The dahlia is named to honor the Swedish botanist Anders Dahl. Dahlias are in the same family as common daisies and sunflowers, and dahlias come in all shapes and sizes, and some of the blooms are as large as dinner plates. And here's a little fun fact about the dahlia. It's the official flower of the City of Destiny and Goodwill, Seattle. And I should have said Starbucks. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. Hey, thanks for spending part of your day with The Daily Gardener. If you want to read even more botanical brevities, just head on over to thedailygardener.org. That's where you can find all the stories, biographies, and books that I share on the show. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. It has lots of goodies in it, and I try to make the newsletter like you're getting a marvelous letter from a garden friend. You can always find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media. You can follow the show on Twitter, and you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. Last but not least, you can easily share your gardener greetings or book submissions by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Maple Grove in Wyoming, Minnesota, with the help of Paige Mance, Brooke Bierbaum, and Eric Begay. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.